Hi class, and welcome to this video on VCE Year 12 Economics, which is going to focus all on the topic of demand. Specifically, this video is going to cover the law of demand, and we're going to consider the concept of a demand curve. So I hope by the end of this video, you can tick off the key knowledge points from our study design 1.3 and 1.4, and you understand what I mean by the law of demand, what a demand curve is, and we can start to think about what happens when there are movements along and shifts of that demand curve. And there are two specific terminology we'll go through. We will then consider factors that will affect demand and the positions of the curve, and in particular, the factors of disposable income, substitutes and complements, preferences and tastes, interest rates, changes in population, and consumer confidence. Why those ones in particular? Because they are the exact factors from our study design. So you can see that we are doing points 3 and 4 of Unit 3 Outcome 1's study design. So what is demand and what is the law of demand? Key principles of economics, in particular microeconomics. When I talk about demand, I am talking about a representation of how much the consumer is willing and able to buy of a product at different prices. So essentially, demand is how much is a buyer willing to buy and is able to buy of a product at the different levels of prices that the product could be at. We then strip that down into what we call the law or principles of demand. The law of demand is really logical. It states that consumers always want to purchase goods and services at the lowest price, which is absolutely logical. Just like when you go into a store, you want to find the lowest price possible for the thing that you want to purchase. Bringing that some technical terms into it, we can start to say there is an inverse relationship between price, the independent variable, and quantity demanded, the dependent variable. What do I mean by an inverse? As one thing goes up, another thing must go down. Our two things are the variables, price, which is our independent variable, and quantity demanded, which is our dependent variable. And for those that are doing science as well, you know that the independent variable, in this case price, is the thing that gets manipulated, so goes up or down. And when that happens, the quantity, our dependent variable, is going to change as well. It's an inverse relationship because as price decreases, the quantity of demanded increases. So as one decreases, the other increases. As price increases, the quantity demanded decreases. This all comes down to our logical law of demand. Consumers want to purchase goods at their lowest price. So if price goes down, they will demand more. And as price goes up, they will demand less. Now, in VCE Economics, we use an assumption called ceteris paribus, which is Latin for with other things constant. This means that we are assuming all the other variables in the market are remaining constant. So we're assuming nothing else is changing. So the only two things we're considering are price and quantity demanded. Now, the law of demand might seem logical, and it is logical, and there are reasons that underpin this law of demand. And remembering, what is our law of demand? As price goes up, demand goes down, and as price goes down, demand will go up. What are the reasons that underpin this? There are 4. The first one being income effect. The income effect is that we acknowledge people have limited income. And hence more people will be unable to afford the product as price rises. This is essentially saying as the price rises, more people will be unable to afford it, so less will be demanded. And also as price rises, a greater percentage of income is needed to produce the product. So for example, if you only have $100 of income per week, and the thing that you want to buy goes up from $10 to $20, it is taking up twice as much of your income to buy, so you're going to buy less. The second concept is this concept of perceived utility. Utility is essentially value. And as price rises, the perceived value or utility to the consumer reduces, and they'll be no longer willing to purchase the product. As price rises, the value that you place on buying it is going to reduce, so you're going to be less likely to buy it. Diminishing marginal utility is our third reason. Remembering utility again equals value. A consumer is only willing to purchase a larger quantity if the price is lower. So that as price goes down, they'll be prepared to buy more, as the enjoyment or the value that you get from buying something reduces each purchase. So for example, if you really like chocolate bars and you buy one, you're going to enjoy that significantly. As you buy your second one, you're going to enjoy that one slightly less. And the third and fourth, until you get to a point where you're getting no enjoyment out of eating more chocolate. And the same concept happens here. Fourthly, the substitution effect is a reason for the law of demand. If a product becomes too expensive, there is a little bit of a typo there, becomes a little bit too expensive, consumers will move their demand to find cheaper alternatives. So as the price goes up of the good or service, demand will go down because some consumers will try and find other alternatives, or what we would call substitution. So for example, if we keep going with that chocolate example, as the price of chocolate goes up, people will start to look for substitutes. They might buy an ice cream instead to get their enjoyment. That's the logic behind the law of demand. And we start to see this in concepts of actual products. So in this case, we are looking at a product, which we will go through for this entire video, on smoothies. You can see as price goes up, for example, from $1 to $3, the quantity demanded will reduce. So as the price has gone from $1 to $3, the quantity demanded has gone from 140 to 100. So we can start to see that we have an inverse relationship. As price has increased, demand for the smoothies has decreased. So we can start to use what we call a demand schedule. This is what we call a demand schedule. We can start to see this law of demand coming out into practice. What we more likely will start to use in our economic study is the concept of a demand curve. Now, the demand curve is going to show the relationship between possible prices and the quantity that the consumers are willing to buy. So you can see we have price on our y-axis and quantity demanded on our horizontal axis, our x-axis. What do you notice? As the price has gone up, so it's $7, they are going to only demand 20. And you can see this listed here. Now, as we move across the demand curve, for example, at $4 here, there is going to be a demand for 80. So we can start to recognize that a demand curve is going to be downward sloping, because as price goes down, our quantity demanded is going to up. We can start to bring some terms into this. If the price goes up, we're going to call that a contraction of demand. there is a decrease in demand in response to higher prices, and there is an expansion of demand when demand increases as a result of lower prices. So if we went from $7 to $4 in terms of our smoothies, we would have an expansion of demand because as price has gone down, demand has gone up. This is where we can start to bring some terminology and consider what I mean by movement along and shifts of. And they're going to be very specific terminology that you must use in Year 12 economics. When discussing demand, we're going to discuss changes in demand as either being a shift of the curve or movement along the curve. In both cases, demand will change, but for very different reasons. A movement along the demand curve occurs when price has changed and price has caused the quantity demanded to be different. So the thing that has changed is price. So we have the same demand curve, but we have just moved along it, either having an expansion or contraction. A shift of the demand curve occurs when one of the factors of demand, we'll go through that in a second, preferences and tastes as an example, have changed. So the thing that has changed is not price, but something else. And therefore, at any given price, there is an increase or decrease in quantity demanded. So in this case, we will have a new demand curve because there has been factors that have shifted it either left or right. A movement along, just the price has changed, so we will have the same demand curve, but we have just moved along it somewhere. So here is our demand curve, and let's consider an example of movement along. In this case, if I have originally started at point B, so price 2, and for whatever reason, price increases to price 1, I am going to have a price increase, and the demand shouldn't say shifts, has moved left from Q2 to Q1. I have a contraction of demand. As my price has increased from P2 to P1, my quantity has gone from Q2 to Q1. So my impact here is I have gone from P2 to P1, an increase in price. And this has led my quantity to go from Q2 to Q1, a decrease in demand. I have a contraction of demand movement along the curve. If, for example, however, I have a price decrease, my demand is going to move right, being an expansion, because the decrease in price, P2 to P3, has led to an increase in quantity demanded from Q2 to Q3. These are my movements along. The thing that has changed has been the price. I don't have a new demand curve. I've just moved along either being a contraction or an expansion, acknowledging the law of demand, which is an inverse law. Price increase, demand goes down. Price decrease, demand goes up. And you can see in this example, the green smoothie one, as we move up and down the demand curve, so move along it, it is going to result in changes in my quantity demanded because of price change. Now, a shift of the demand curve is going to create a new demand curve because another factor, and we'll go through them in a second, has created a whole new demand curve. So for every price point, there is going to be a different amount of demand, quantity demanded, because there is a new demand curve. I can split this into two categories: a change or a shift to the right, and you can see I'm using the term shift to right, has occurred when I've gone from D to D2, increasing all demand at all prices as a result of a factor that has increased demand. In this case, I'm saying consumer demand, tastes. So the taste that consumers are liking this product more, so there is more demand for it. So what does this mean? At the price point of $4,000, 5 million used to be demanded. Now 6 million is now demanded. I have got more demand at the price of $4,000. An increase in interest rates, however, isn't a factor that could shift the demand curve left. And in this case, going from D to D1, I have a reduction in demand at all price points. And in this case, at $4,000, only 4 million is demanded. So I have decreased demand at all price points as a result of this. So you can see we have many factors, and we're going to go through them in a second, that will shift the demand curve either to the right. So shift to right equals increase in demand, and a shift to the left equals a reduction in demand at all price points. And it's really important to use that term shift when you do. So what factors do you think could have created, in this case of our green smoothies, having a new demand curve? I have gone from D1 to D2 here. You can see there's been a shift, meaning that there is a shift to right. Therefore, demand has increased. What factors do you think could have created a shift of demand where for each price point, for example, $1, 140 used to be demanded, now 150 are demanded. So what could lead to this shift in demand? What factor could create it? Have a think, maybe even write a list. The factors that we are going to cover today are the ones in your study design. There are 6 of them. Disposable income, changes in interest rates, price of substitutes and complementary products, preferences in tastes, changes in population, consumer and business confidence. So apologies, there is 7. 7 factors that can affect demand. There are many others, but these are the 7 that I encourage you to talk about in your answers. All of these things will result in shifts, so new demand curves that either increase or decrease demand at all price points. The first one is disposable income. Disposable income refers to the total income that households have received in exchange for their participation in production, plus government transfers, less income tax. To put it simply, it is all the income that you've made minus the taxes that you have. This is the money, the amount that consumers have to spend on goods and services. This is different to discretionary income, which is all the money that you have left to spend at discretion after paying all your expenses. But simply, if you have more income, disposable income, it is expected that you will have an increase in demand if your increase in disposable income increases. So an increase in disposable income equals a shift to the right, an increase in demand at all price points. That makes sense. If all the people in the economy have more income to spend on goods and services, there's going to be more demand for all goods and services. Conversely, if there is a decrease in disposable income, there is going to be a shift to the left and a decrease in demand at all price points. Now, importantly, this is for what we would call normal goods. Increase in disposable income, increase in demand of normal goods, decrease in disposable income, decrease in demand of normal goods. Now, as we just discussed, an increase in disposable income, this could be through maybe tax cuts. will lead to an increase in demand for normal goods. This will shift the demand curve to the right, as people are maybe willing and able to purchase a greater quantity of goods. However, we will also talk about quickly the concept of inferior goods. These are goods where decreases in demand, where there is a decrease in demand when disposable income increases. This is because the more costly substitutes offer more satisfaction. So these are the things that people buy when they don't have much income. For example, second-hand cars, frozen meals, canned goods, cheaper goods that people only buy because they have less income. So if disposable income goes up, it is likely that you're going to have a decrease in demand for inferior goods. So an increase in disposable income will lead to a shift to the left and a decrease in demand at all prices for inferior goods. A decrease in disposable income will shift demand to the right and increase demand at all price points for inferior goods, because these are the things that people buy when you have less disposable income. The impact of interest rates is also a factor. Interest rates refers to the cost of borrowing money. Interest rates go up or down. And the increase in interest rates will generally have the greatest impact on those who are indebted, have lots of debt. So if the cost of that debt goes up because interest rates go up, it's going to impact the people that have lots of debt. So an increase in interest rates means indebted households will have less discretionary income, and this will cause a demand curve to shift to the left. They will have less discretionary income to buy goods and services because they need to spend more money on paying off their debt. So, a decrease in interest rates, let's go to the first one. An increase in interest rates, so a cost of your debt is more, is going to lead to a shift to the left from D to D1. And this is going to decrease demand at all price points. A decrease in interest rates, however, where you are paying less on your debt, means that you're going to have more discretionary income. So there's going to be a shift to the right from D to D2, and there's going to be an increase in demand at all price points. The third factor that we're going to talk about is the impact of the price of substitute goods. A substitute is a viable good or service that might be used instead of another product. So this means that the substitute fulfills a similar need. So for example, an example I used in the video already is chocolate, or in a previous video, chocolate. As the price of chocolate goes up, you might start to consider substitutes. So a substitute of chocolate might be an ice cream. They're both treats that you use to reward yourself. Other examples are cars versus public transport, buying butter or margarine, Nike or Adidas shoes, PlayStation or Xbox. These are all substitute. They fulfill a similar need. Now, if the price of one good service increases, public transport for example, it would likely result in the demand for another good increasing, because you are trying to fulfill the similar needs. So if the price of one goes up, you'll look to the other one. If the price of PlayStation doubled, people will buy more Xboxes. So if there is an decrease in the substitute price, so your alternative goes down, apologies, this should say, if there is an increase in the substitute price, so if the price of your substitute goes down, then there is going to be a shift to the left. Oh no. Yes, an increase Oh, sorry, I apologize. I've messed it up, so let's start again. It is correct. If there is a decrease in your substitute, that means your substitute is going to be more desirable. So there is going to be a shift to the left because the product that you are trying to sell is going to have less demand because people are going to go to the substitute because it has gone down in price. If the substitute goes up in price, your product that you are trying to sell will seem more valuable, so there will be an increase in demand. Complementary goods are slightly different. A complementary product is not a substitute, so you buy one or the other to meet a need. A complementary product is one that is consumed together. So often the need is met by consuming two of them, but they are sold separately. So an example is bread and butter. You put them together often when you are consuming them. If the price of a complementary product, the thing that you need to consume with your product, goes up, it would likely result in the other product, the complementary product, demand decreasing. So if the price of butter goes up, it is likely the demand of bread will go down because the price of combined price when you consume them is essentially going up. This is because consumers may be unwilling or unable to purchase both items because the price of one has gone up. So if there is a decrease in your complementary price, for example, the price of butter goes down, in this case, this product, which would be bread, the demand for it will go up, so from D to D2, because there will be an increase in demand at all price points, a shift to the right. An increase in the complementary price, so the price of butter goes up, will lead to a decrease in the demand of bread and a shift from D to D1 and a decrease in demand at all price points. Now, the impact of preferences and tastes doesn't have a supply and demand curve in my example, but we do understand demand is influenced by the taste, attitude, and preferences towards particular goods and services and trends. Things become more popular and less popular because of tastes and attitudes. So, for example, consumer preferences to watch movies on Netflix could decrease in demand for going to the movies. Or preferences to stream music through Spotify has led to a decrease in purchase of music from iTunes or buying CDs. So personal preferences of society is going to shift the demand curve left and right, depending if it's becoming more popular, a shift to the right, or less popular, a shift to the left. It is important to understand that this is where brand and positive or negative media attention can impact demand in many ways. We also understand population growth and demographic change greatly influence demand. So a growing population, where your overall population will go up, would generally need more goods and services, and this will increase demand. So as your population increases, so you just have more people, demand is likely to increase. So that's going to equal a shift to the right. The demographic structure is more about what is the type of characteristics within your population, and that's going to affect the range of goods and services. So this might be due to an aging population or a boom in births, or just an immigration is leading to a change in the cultural mix. And these different cultures, ages, amount of children are going to impact them things that are going to be preferenced as goods and services. So, for example, in an aging population, which Australia does have, demand for certain products such as healthcare and nursing homes may increase. You might also see demand for youthful products decrease. Now, impact of consumer sentiment or consumer confidence is the measure of the expectations of what we think the future state of the economy is going to be. Are we confident as consumers that the economy is going to be strong? Are we going to have money in the future? This is going to impact our ability to purchase and consume products, because a decrease in consumer confidence would likely lead us to be a bit concerned, and hence we're more willing to save. We're going to save the money we have for that rainy day we think we're coming. Now, if we're saving money, we are more likely to have a decrease in demand for goods and services, or a shift to the left. Now, if we feel secure, we have an increase in consumer confidence, it's likely that we're confident that we'll have future employment, money, income coming in the future. We might be more prepared to buy goods and services, particularly those discretionary ones that we don't really need to buy. This would likely lead to an increase in demand or a shift to the right. And guys, they are your demand factors that influence demand. So, and either result in an increase or decrease in demand, in particular, a shift where a new demand curve. And we need to recognize and understand these factors, understand how they're going to impact demand, and are they going to result in a shift to the left, where we have our demand going to the left and demand going down, or a shift to the right, where we have a new demand curve and demand goes up at each price point. And let's recap on quite a long video. I hope that this has helped you understand the law of demand. Price increasing equals demand going down. Price decreasing equals demand going up. This results in demand curves, and we understand that movements along are as a result of changes in price, and shifts of result to a result of other factors impacting. And these other factors that are likely to lead to changes in demand curve are these things like disposable income, substitutes, complements, preferences, tastes, interest rates, changes in population, changes in demographic, and consumer and business confidence. I hope you followed this video. It's been quite a long one, but it's an important topic, and I hope you've enjoyed and it's built your understanding on the law of demand and the demand curve.